So we've been using our solar system for the last 2 years, and we have some mixed feelings about it. To give you a little bit of a context, we've got to give you the history of our home. So we bought our home back in 2022, and when we were looking at the home, we did notice that it did not have gas and only electric as the utility. This meant that we had an electric furnace, an electric stove, and electric water heater. When we were looking at this house for a potential home for us, we looked into the price of adding a gas propane tank and running new lines and replacing all the appliances, or installing solar, and we found that they were both priced about the same. So we pulled the trigger on solar. So after moving in the summer of 2022, we started construction on our shop, and in December of 2022 we finally got our solar installed, and by the beginning of January we had it turned on. So this is our solar array, which consists of 20 solar panels. This is where the shutoff is, and when they installed it, they ran conduit and trenched the line back to our home and our power meter. So tucked away in our corner here, this is our battery backup. It is a fairly large box that sits on the wall. I'm 6 feet tall, so it's about 5.5 that it's up off the ground. Then we have the inverter here, and then we have a breaker box that it all ties into. So this breaker box is for the shop, but it's also ties into our home as well. So this is the secondary breaker box. We actually have 3 for the whole system. When we moved in, we had the 1 breaker box, and then they put in 2 breaker boxes. This one is for the shop, and then they put 1 in for the circuits that are going to be under power during a power outage. So when we do have a power outage and the battery backup kicks on, it's only serving 7 circuits. It's serving the shop, and then it's serving 3 of the circuits in our home. It can't be serviced on the furnace or the water heater or the electric range. It only can do 120, but it does our kitchen outlets, it does our butler's pantry outlets, does my office and our living room. So if the power goes out, our internet stays on, our fridges stay on, we're still able to use air fryers or microwaves to cook, so we're not out. I mean, we won't be able to use the stovetop or use the furnace, but we have a wood burning stove, we have other means to cook and to stay warm. So during a power outage, an extended power outage, the battery will last throughout the night, and then once the sun comes up, if it's not too overcast, it will charge this back up to 100% and last us until the power comes back on. So let's go over the pros and cons of having solar. Pros for solar is that you're self-reliant with your power. It's wonderful. You don't have to rely on the grid. You don't have to rely on any other outside source of your power. You can just use your system and use it to your content and to your needs. I love having a battery because all the excess power that is generated by our solar panels is stored in our battery that we can then use in the evening. And the battery also has an ability to store reserve power. So if the power goes out in the middle of the night, it can dip into that reserve power and still power our fridges and our appliances, our necessary appliances, and keep us going until the sun can come back up and generate more power for us. we live in an area where power outages happen often, so it's nice to be able to rely on that and not have to worry about our fridges warming up or not working properly during a power outage. Another pro of having solar is it just keeps us more power conscious and gives us a little bit more of an idea of what needs to be ran and how it needs to be ran, and it just helps us understand the use of power. And before we had solar, we would just use the power and not really think about it. But having a solar just helps with understanding how much power an appliance has, if that makes any sense. What helps us to be more conscious of our power is the mobile app that the solar power, solar system provides. It lets me be able to see what's currently being drawn, how much our solar is producing, how much it's storing, how much it's feeding to the grid, and even how much power we're pulling from the grid to run our appliances if the solar doesn't meet our power needs. So that's a nice app and it allows me to look at the past and see the average, the amount of power that it generates and how much power we consume over the course of days, weeks, and years. And the last thing that we really liked about getting a solar system is when we got the solar, we were able to do 0% financing, which is great because we didn't have the money at the time to fully finance the solar power, and we had to get a loan, and having a 0% finance was wonderful and great to have. So here are the generic cons of having a solar system, and this is generic over the whole, over everyone, not just specifically with us. This is generic across the board. So the number one thing is solar companies are very deceitful. They are there to get your business. One thing that I noticed when we were getting ours is they were promising the moon, and when I was looking into it, the company that we went with, they were saying that the application, the mobile app that they had was it would notify you if a storm was coming in and would ask, hey, do you want us to turn on the battery so that it would charge more, and or it would automatically do certain things during storms or before a power outage. And I thought that was wonderful. I thought that would be great to be away and saying, hey, there's a storm coming, do you want us to prioritize your battery? And I found that doesn't exist with the app, and I don't think it does exist with any of the solar apps. But it was just it's okay. I mean, I manually just I think about like storms, and if the storm's coming in, I'm gonna prioritize the battery, and I have to do it manually. But for them to promise something that doesn't exist, it kind of irked me after getting the system and going through the app and seeing that that's not an option. I was pretty upset, but it was no deal breaker. But this wasn't the only thing that they had promised either. During the process, they were saying about all these tax benefits and being able to have the government cut you a check for 20% of the cost of the solar, and I found that doesn't happen. When we finished the solar and we had it financed, when we went to do our taxes, it wasn't like that at all. They don't cut you a check, and it wasn't going to be 20% of our solar system. So what it was is, because I tried to figure it out on my own. I do my taxes with a program on the computer, but this year it was just so complex, and I was just so shocked, like why isn't it letting me get this money? So I went to an accountant, had them do my taxes, and found out that that's not true. So what happened with us is they reserve this 20% as a tax credit that pays to our taxes, that contributes to the taxes that we owe to the government. So what that means is that of the pool of the 20% that we got, it would sit there, and whatever taxes we owed during the year, that's what it would pay off. And then whatever was left over, it would just roll over to the next year. And this will happen for the next 15, 20 years, because with how we have our withdrawals for our taxes, we only owe maybe $1,000 that we have to pay into it. So it pulls $1,000 out of that 20% and then rolls over. It's okay, but it's not the 20% that they promised right up front. We were promised this huge amount and these checks that come in, and it never happened. It was a shock when you're told that you're gonna get something and you don't get it, and it's just like, especially if it's an absurd amount of money. They were trying to get our business and promising more than what they could offer. And another thing about solar companies is you cannot trust their reviews. So during the whole process, the installation was fine, and then when it came in and turned on the system for the first time and had us review the documents, before they had us sign anything, they had us log in on Google and do a 5-star review on their company. I've not used this system. I was oblivious of how it works, and all I had the experience was for the install. So having me leave a review before I even used the system was like, okay. So that was part of the closing documentation, was for me to log in and leave a 5-star review. So I left a 5-star review, a single sentence saying I'm happy that I finally have solar, and that was it. And then I made a mental note to go back and change if needed, and of course I did. I was not happy about the tax situation and the promises that they made, so I went back and changed my 5-star review. I just felt like it needed to be changed. I didn't feel comfortable just leaving a 5-star review and calling it good. And there's clients out there that will leave the 5-star review, and that's the only review that they leave, because they don't leave reviews, and they're not going to go back and change it if they're unhappy. So a lot of these reviews that are on Google, and you can't trust them. Solar companies are incentivized by the utility companies. Many times we get the utility companies coming door to door saying that they have a program for us, and it's not the utility companies, it's the solar companies posing as the utility companies, talking about installing solar as a program for the utility company. And the solar companies, I'm positive, get checks and incentives from the utility companies to install their system, just because it ties into the grid and helps feed the grid. I don't trust the solar companies, because they have a different prerogative and their customers aren't their number one priority. And last, the solar companies, they're going to charge whatever they want for the solar panels, for the installation, for the batteries. It's getting expensive. It is. And with the system that we put in, which included a 20 panel array and a 10 kilowatt battery, it cost us $70,000, which is an absurd amount of money, especially us. I mean, but with 0% financing and the promise that it would take over our electric bill, we thought, why not? If I could find a cheaper option, I would have done it. But like I said, the solar companies are going to charge what they're going to charge, and it was going to be that much anywhere I went. And the last thing is the solar panel being tied to the grid. What this means is if you get a system that's just solar panels, no battery, if the power goes out, your power goes out, even if you're connected to solar. Why they do that is if the power goes out and they need to work on any lines or any service lines or anything down the line, they can't have your solar panel charging that line. So as a safety precaution for those workers, your system has to be shut down when the grid is shut down. So what that means is the only benefit that you get from a solar panel is if the grid is on and the sun is up. That is it. Only when you have a battery are you able to get that benefit of having to use the solar while the power is off. And that's how it is. And when the solar panel is tied to the grid, they do say they buy back your power that you're feeding into the grid, but it's at a fraction of what you pay for them to give you power. For example, the rate that we are currently getting today in the winter is 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And to feed the grid, the excess solar that we have, we're selling our solar 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's almost half of what we would be getting from the power companies. So for example, if I feed the grid 10 kilowatt hours during the afternoon when the sun is out and the solar's getting its peak, if I feed that back to the grid, I'm going to get 60 cents. But if I need that 10 kilowatts back in the evening, I then have to pay $1. So that means that I'm losing 40 cents in that transaction. So having a battery does help because that gets stored on there, but still, I would rather just keep that power on my property and not have to give it back and then buy it back and then lose a profit out of it. And here are some cons that are specific to us. This doesn't necessarily happen to everyone, but it did happen to us. And the first one is that the solar system that they installed is not sufficient for our needs. And when we moved in and we had the solar guys coming in, what they usually do is they get the power, they look at the power bill for the last year of our system, and then they build a system off of that. But because we have only lived in the house for a couple of weeks while they were in, they didn't have that. But I did walk them through each appliance that we had and their draws, and I guess they took a note of it, but when they built the solar system and they put in the panels, it does not cover what we need it for. So to give you an idea of how much power we are using, I'm just going to pull up the previous year's data. So back in 2023, we used approximately 19,000 kilowatt hours for the entire year, and our system only produced 11,752 kilowatt hours. So from that, 38% of our power was independent, meaning it came from our solar, and 62% came from the grid. So we bought 62% of our power in 2023. In 2024, you'll see similar numbers: 17,000 kilowatt hours consumed and 11,700 produced. A little bit better with 43% independent, 57% grid buy. So all in all, to be able to use solar 100%, we would probably have to double our array, double our battery, and do something with the furnace, of course. They did promise, this company that we went with, that if we ever had to increase the amount of panels on our array or increase the amount of storage in our battery system, we could do that at no cost to installment, meaning if there was any labor costs, they would cover that. But we would have to pay for the panels, we would have to pay for the batteries, we'd have to pay for the upfront cost of the solar that they would be selling to us. Which means that they can sell the solar panels at whatever price, or sell the batteries at whatever price. They don't have to. I don't have to pay for the labor to install it, but I have to buy it from them. When they installed our solar, they installed it on top of the shop, which is what I intended, which was what I wanted. But unbeknownst to me, I did not know that solar needed to be at a certain angle to be optimized, to be used properly. So in the summer, it's at that angle, it's at the optimal angle, but during the winter, it needs to be a little bit higher to get optimal coverage. And I wish there was a way to be able to adjust the solar panels while being installed on the roof, but that's just something that irks me during the winter time. I hardly get any power from my solar during the winter time, and that's when I use the most power, is because of the electric furnace that we have. So what now? After 2 years, what would I have done differently? Well, most certainly I would not have used a solar company. It's specifically one that's incentivized by utility companies to install their solar. Recently, I found that there's people out there that do off-grid solar panels, specifically made for cabins and other things that are in remote locations, but can be used in an urban environment. And how it's installed is it's installed just like the solar companies would. They would install the solar panels on your roof, or the array would be in a field or in the backyard on mounts. It would still run into batteries that would be storing the power throughout the day and use it at night. But how it's connected to your system at the breaker box is just like how a backup generator would be. It's a box that you have the grid power coming in, and you have the solar power in, and you have the output coming out to the house. And it's just a switch that goes from the grid to the solar. And it's a manual switch over, but you're not feeding to the grid, so you don't have issues with the power. When the power goes out, you can easily have it be on solar and not have any worries about it. Plus, you don't have the solar companies that are incentivized to put in their own system. It's a lot cheaper and it's a lot more reliable. In the end, I still would get solar. Solar, it's just there's so many things that we can be self-reliant on. You can be self-reliant on your water by installing a rain barrel system that collects water from your roof and from your downspouts. And we can be self-reliant on our food by growing our own food and gardens and chickens. But when it comes to power, the only way that we are able to be self-reliant is with solar. And having solar and having that option to be able to rely on something that's on your property rather than relying on power grids and power plants and coal, but relying on your own power at your home it's empowering. So if you want to learn a little bit more about off-grid solar panels, I recommend giving this guy a visit. Smith's Off-Grid. He has put in his own system, his own solar system that I envy, and I wish I had known him earlier, because I would have definitely done it this way and used his services before using any solar panel company. It's just the way he does it and the way he explains it just makes sense, and it's just like I want his system, but of course I've already went with this one. So if I could do it over again, I would definitely do it his way than my own way. But all in all, I'm happy with my solar. I'm not happy with the companies or how they do their work, but I am happy that I'm self-reliant on power. I still need to do a lot to optimize it. I'm thinking about adding more arrays, maybe adding more power, but all in all, what draws the power the most is our electric furnace. And the only way to be able to fix it is to either get a more efficient heat pump that doesn't draw as much power, or pull the trigger and get a propane tank and run new lines and replace the furnace with a gas furnace. Then again, I'm not self-reliant on the gas, so that imposes an issue. So, but that's something I need to work out, and you guys don't have to worry about it. But all in all, I hope that this video has been informative to you, and that it helps you make the decision on solar in your home and with your family. But if you have any questions, please leave a comment. I always love reading your comments, but I really enjoy you taking your time and watching this video. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. Thanks for watching.